Hello there my RPG lovers and welcome to another video. After Gothic 1 dropped on Switch, we knew for sure that THQ Nordic will do the same for the sequel. Come to think of it, the first time we got any info about the Switch ports was for Gothic 2, so it was safe to assume that both of these games were coming on Nintendo's hybrid console. When I covered the first game on the Switch, I wasn't properly equipped, but in the meantime, my new capture card arrived. So this video should give you a much better idea how the sequel looks and how it performs. Gothic 1 on Switch already introduced some brand new features, and it was to be expected to see them in the sequel as well. And indeed, those new features are pretty much the same in Gothic 2 on Switch. However, we also got some brand new features which will affect your gameplay experience. But let's start from the beginning.
A single prisoner altered the fate of hundreds. But he paid a high price for it.
If you played Gothic 2 on PC, you might remember that the intro cutscene was in glorious 240 pixels. Well, the Switch port noticeably improved the quality of the intro cutscene. They didn't just upscale the resolution of the cutscene, it's obvious they did much more than that. Especially when you put them side by side. They added more visual detail to some scenes and even some new audio effects.
Of course he's still alive. What did you think?
It looks way better this time around, even though it's essentially the same cutscene. This is a very nice touch because they didn't need to do this at all, but it's a nice little surprise for all the Gothic fans. The cutscene looks way better in general. If you're a new Switch player, you probably don't care that much, but it's worth mentioning. After you start talking to Zardas, you can see the DLC cutscene, which is exactly the same like before, and it's kinda off-putting now. You would think they would try to do something similar for this cutscene, but I guess that would be too much to ask for. Nevertheless, I'm really glad they decided to overhaul the original cutscene. Then we have the menu and some new options. First of all, they are using the original Gothic 2 background instead of the Night of the Raven. Don't worry though, this version of the game features the DLC of course, it's called Complete Collection for a reason. I immediately went into the settings menu to see if there is something new. And indeed, we have a pretty important setting in the video menu. You can choose to play the game in high quality or high performance modes. Gothic 1 on Switch had some notable performance issues when it first came out, but it was greatly improved with patches after the release. It also had some bugs as well that players experienced. That's one of the reasons why THQ was really careful with the review keys this time around. I received the review key for Gothic 2 on Switch only 2 days before the official release, and it was pretty much the same with Gothic 1. And of course, that was not enough time to go through the whole game and test everything because it's a huge RPG.
There must be a catch to this.
I tried my best to get the key a bit earlier, but that wasn't possible, and I guess THQ wanted to make sure that everything works properly this time around before they send the keys. But anyway, I played enough to be able to compare the visuals, performance, new features, and talk about the general gameplay experience. Which brings us back to this setting. The high quality is the default option, so if you don't enter the video settings, you're going to play the game in this mode. Now, I did a bunch of comparisons between these two modes, and I'm going to show you here some of those scenes. You can definitely tell the difference between the two in pretty much all of the scenes. I expected to see a shorter view range in the performance mode, since I was convinced that setting heavily impacts the performance. But as you can see, the view range is exactly the same in all of the scenes. The one and only visual difference between these two modes is the shadows. This might not seem like a huge deal at first, but as you play the game more and start comparing these two visual modes, it's very easy to see that shadows make a huge difference in visual quality in general. I know we're talking about a 20 years old game, but there is a reason why Gothic 2 still manages to create such an amazing and immersive atmosphere. The shadows in high quality mode definitely make the game a bit more immersive and pretty to look at. Although if you start the game on high performance mode, you're probably not going to care. Besides the shadows on environments, you can see the changes on the Nameless Hero shadow. On high quality mode, the Nameless Hero has a full blown shadow, which is animated to properly reflect the actions of the hero. On high performance mode, the shadow is just a blurry circle. So yeah, they had to cut corners somewhere in order to improve the performance. The view range is comparable to the PC version when you push the slider to 300% and everything else looks pretty much the same. Although I didn't notice the sharpness filter like in Gothic 1 Switch port, by the way. Gothic 1 on Switch had noticeably increased the sharpness, which made the game look a bit different in general. As far as I can tell, that's not the case with Gothic 2. Now let's talk about the performance in both of these modes. You can certainly feel the difference between these two modes while playing, especially in more intensive locations like the city of Corinus. First of all, the FPS is unlocked in this game and it varies a lot depending on the location. After I tested both modes for a while, I heavily recommend playing on the performance modes, especially if you never played the game before. Does that mean the performance mode manages to keep 60 FPS at all times? No it doesn't, but it feels way smoother than the quality modes. Now, I don't have the tools to properly measure the FPS and show you, but the YouTuber by the name Sicey1 already did some pretty good testing. Big props to him for his work, and I'll have the channel link in the description. As you can see, the quality mode can also reach higher 50s or even 60 FPS in some open areas, which are not that intensive. However, it usually runs in 40 to 50 FPS in open areas, and it can even fall to 30 FPS in the city of Corinus. I also noticed that when it starts raining, the FPS goes down in quality and high performance modes, but it's definitely more noticeable in the quality modes. While this weather effect is very nice and atmospheric, it does affect the smoothness of the game quite a bit, especially in Corinus. The good news is, the performance mode manages to keep almost lock 60 FPS in most open areas. I tried exploring everything that I could, but it was kinda challenging not to die as a low level character. Nevertheless, the gameplay experience felt really smooth in general in the performance modes. That's why I heavily recommend sticking to this mode, even though the shadows in high quality mode makes the game look much nicer. So overall, I'm really glad that THQ included these two different modes. I had some harsh critique for Gothic 1 on Switch when it comes to the performance, so I'm glad they managed to improve the sequel in this field. So what about the gameplay? Well, like I said, it's pretty much the same like in Gothic 1 on Switch. We have the same quality of life features. That includes the same UI from Gothic 1 on Switch, which is much more convenient compared to the original UI from Gothic 2. Although Gothic 2 already had a grid-based menu by default, but this new menu is even better. You can quick save and quick load the game whenever you want, and there are very useful shortcuts for using the consumables. The magic and scroll casting menu is back as well. You can just hold the left shoulder button and select the spell from the new menu. There is a separate menu for equipped items, which makes it much easier to see which items you equipped on the Nemesis hero. This is nothing new if you played Gothic 1 on Switch, by the way. These quality of life features, along with a new control scheme, makes Gothic 2 on Switch a very appealing option, assuming you own the system. Ironically, it's probably the most convenient way to play Gothic 1 and 2 nowadays, because they work surprisingly well on the controller. If you never played these games before, they were infamous for clunky keyboard and mouse controls. That was quite possibly the biggest problem with the gameplay and why some people give up shortly after they try the game out. But Gothic 2 improved the controls a lot, and you didn't have to use two buttons for each action like in Gothic 1. The controller scheme on Switch just makes it even easier to experience this legendary RPG, and I'm really glad that Switch players have the chance to experience the sequel as well. If you don't have a Switch, don't worry, because THQ said they will bring the new quality of life features to the PC version as well, although we don't have a date for that yet. Speaking of controls, Gothic 2 also included motion controls on the Switch, and they work exactly like in Gothic 1. There is a quick little tutorial if you want to learn how they work, and they can be fun for a while. It's a cool gimmick, but I wouldn't recommend playing the whole game like this, unless you're really into motion controls. I played the game for just a couple of hours so far, and I didn't see any bugs or glitches. A lot of people had some issues with bugs in Gothic 1 Switch ports, but THQ published some patches that fixed those issues. All friendly and hostile NPCs that I met so far are working fine. The last thing I want to mention is the red sparkling visual effect when you die and reload a save. I don't know if this even means something or it's just a visual glitch. If you figure this out, be sure to let me know in the comments. And that will be it for this video. Gothic 2 on Switch is exactly what I expected.
There must be a catch to this.
The first game gave us a pretty good idea what we can expect from the sequel. Luckily, the sequel seems more stable in terms of the performance, and the new option in the menu is more than welcome. I will probably stream the game a little bit on my YouTube channel, so you can see how this port looks live. Be sure to press the like button and subscribe for more content. Speaking of supporting the channel, I just launched my personal store where you can buy some interesting t-shirts and hoodies. And of course, you can always become a Patreon or a YouTube member and get your name on the end credits of my videos. Many thanks to all of my current supporters, and I'll see you in the next one.